Everybody, my name is Dan Brown. We're about to get started here. We are starting right now. I'm coordinating a project called Why Not Windsor Essex, and we are about engaging the 18 to 35-year-olds in Windsor and building the talent pool in our region. The reason we got here today all started with a series that the Windsor Star did over the Christmas and New Year break called Windsor Gone, and they did a series looking at why people stay and leave the region and how that relates to their employment. And we carried that on to a discussion and forum that we did live last month called Windsor Gone Forum. And we spoke about how that relates to employment. And today we're here to carry on the discussion and shift it a little bit and focus on the people who are here. And we're having a Windsor Here Forum about youth employment and about unconventional ways that people can get involved in the workforce and advance their careers. So thank you all for being here. This should take about an hour or so. We'll see. Last time we stretched a bit long. And I'm going to do some introductions. So we'll start off with, we have Yvonne Peel on here. If you could introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Peel. I'm the president and CEO of WeTech Alliance, and I'm on official Twitter duty today. So please, if you're watching at home or you're in the audience, please tweet us using the Work Windsor hashtag. We're going to kind of throw back to myself and Carolyn to answer some of your questions throughout the panel, and we're really excited to hearing what you have to say.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Thompson. I'm the reporter with the Windsor Star who did the Gone series. So I'm here more for background and doing Twitter for the Star today.
Great, and now our guests, thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate you being here. We'll start on the side across from me and work your way towards me.
Thank you. This is John Azzapardi from Laval International. We're a locally owned and operated manufacturer here in Windsor. Been in business for 38 years. We build molds. Pretty proud to be here in the area, and we're looking to make a difference and see how we can keep the youth in the area, because it's a good time, and right now we need employees, and the youth could fill that position that we're looking for.
Hi, I'm Noor. Hello. Hi, I'm Noor Hasham. I work at St. Clair College. I'm a project manager for pre-apprenticeship programs. I'm excited to be here because I also sit on the Why Not committee, and I'm really passionate about making sure that young people here are working. So thank you for having me, Dan.
Hi, I'm Danielle McAuliffe, and I work for the St. Clair College Employment Center. We are one of 3 centers in Wellsburg, Windsor, and Amherstburg that have a partnership with Employment Ontario. We have all free services to help anyone who's unemployed, underemployed, or just looking for a different type of job. And it's job searching, resume development, interviewing techniques. As well, we deliver the Second Career Program as well as the Ontario Self-Employment Benefit Program. So also I sit on Why Not, and I'm excited to help youth and help anyone who's looking for work in the Windsor-Essex area.
Hi, my name is Alex DeNonville. I'm an event planner with the Essex Region Conservation Authority. I'm originally from Windsor, and my job search took me far and wide. I went to the Northwest Territories in Alberta, and I recently came back to Windsor to work. I came back in August, so happy to be here from the employee perspective, and looking forward to it.
Good evening, everyone. Frank Ebertsazy, president of AlphaCore. We're a local IT company, been around for 20 years. And also another hat that I wear is chair of WeTech, so very glad to be here this evening. And we're also going to be conversation on the employer side.
Hi everyone, my name is Jay Civikumar, and I'm a student at the University of Windsor, and I'm studying International Relations and Development. And I'm just here today to give the student employment perspective, as I've had a range of different jobs in Windsor. I feel like I have a lot of advice to give people my age.
Perfect, thanks everybody. So let's break the ice here. I want to hear about either an unconventional, funny, or unusual way that you or someone you know has gotten a job. And if you don't have a good example of that, let us know how you got your first job. We'll go the opposite direction now.
I didn't have a personal experience obtaining a job unconventionally, but my sister got a job when she was young, when she was just at the hair salon, and she just had a really good relationship with her hairstylist, and she was just casually talking about how she wanted to obtain a job somehow, and she's been searching, and she had no contacts, so she just was really struggling. So what happened was her hairstylist actually suggested her to like some people that she knows, and she just got a job that way, I guess. So it just happened randomly in a hair salon, and not an area where you would expect to obtain a job, but that's just how it worked out for her. So yeah.
So there was this one organization that I volunteered at once upon a time, and there's an individual that was let go on a Friday afternoon, and they were heading on a road trip on Saturday morning. So the hiring committee decided to phone this individual on this road trip and did the whole job interview process. So this individual was let go Friday at 5 and had a job Monday at 9 a.m.
I don't have any crazy stories, but I will tell you about my first job that I got through a connection. My friend of mine worked at Burger King, and he hooked me up with a job at Burger King. So that was my first job when I was 16. It's a good start.
One of my recent clients was working at the Dollarama, and he had a customer come in, and they were $2 or $3 short, and he said, "Don't worry about it, I'll just pay for it." He had some money in his pocket, so he covered the cost. And the guy said, "You know what, I'm the manager of the beer store in town. Bring me your resume. I really like your customer service, and you went the extra mile for me." So the next day he brought a resume, and he was hired, and he's now the assistant manager while he's in school full-time pursuing his university degree. So you never know who you're talking to at any given moment and where that might lead you. So you need to be mindful of always kind of, you know, who you talk to. It really does matter.
Just recently, one of my clients who's in our industrial mechanic millwright program, she's female, she had just updated her LinkedIn profile, and she had that she was very passionate about getting into the manufacturing sector. And actually an employer reached out to her, asked her to come in for an interview on Monday. She went into an interview without even sending her resume, brought up examples of the projects that she was working on at St. Clair College, and he actually offered her a job right on the spot. So she will be starting in March. So I thought that was a great example, because oftentimes we don't think of the social media outlets as an opportunity for us to find employment. And I think that it's a perfect way nowadays, where you're always online, to really ensure that you have that constantly updated and you're branding yourself in a very positive way.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. My first job was cleaning the floors in the bathroom, so it wasn't really that exciting. So we'll leave that story out. But I thought, I thought there was a good example that I had for the youth. I had a friend who was trying to be a teacher at St. Clair, and it was very difficult for you to get a teacher job, especially right now. And he took it upon himself to get to know one of the profs. And he asked the prof, he said, you know, "I really want a job. What can I do to get a job? And what can I do to help you?" And he says, "Well, to be honest with you, I have this curriculum that I haven't written yet." So this individual, never been a teacher before, actually took it upon himself to write the entire curriculum for a course, wrote the textbook, and actually did all the demos for the labs. Did it all himself and handed it right to the prof and said, "Here you go. Can I get the job?" And lo and behold, he got a part-time job to do that. So I thought that was a really good example of what you need to do to think outside the box. If you're young and you want that career, sometimes you got to think outside the box. You got to ask what you got to do to get that job. So I thought that was a good example.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I want to get the ball rolling by lifting off what we talked about at the last forum, which is a lot to do with education, and people have a lot of different views on what education means to employment. So I want to throw this out to everybody. How do you balance, you know, a lot of people think about an investment in education as an investment in your career, and how do you balance that need for education and expectation of a certain level of expectation with an expectation of experience? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I'll single you out if you don't.
I guess I'll start with that. You know, education and experience is, I call it a sliding scale. If you have, you know, low experience, then you probably need more education. If you have more education, you can get away with less experience. So when you're looking at somebody, if you're talking about the youth, you have to really tailor yourself to the career you're looking for and base your education on that. And then once you gain the experience, then you can probably let off on that. But until you get that job, you need to continue to make yourself more marketable, and that's through education.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I think you need to tap into your transferable skills and how they relate to your experience. And if you don't have some of those, and when you're looking at academics, think about a program that maybe has a placement or a co-op in it so that you will get those tangible experiences while you're in school. If your program doesn't have that, there's always volunteer experience so that you can be in the workforce, and it helps with resume development and your networking. But you want to have a nice balance between the two.
Great. And what about just getting experience in general, and how a common barrier is you'll see a job posting that has a certain expectation of experience, maybe 1 or 2 years. What would the person do who's a recent grad and hasn't had even that level of experience? And maybe we could talk a bit more about like the role of volunteering in finding a job. I'll throw this to you, Frank.
Absolutely, Dan. So volunteering is a great idea. Sending out your resume and putting that offer out there that you're willing to work for a company to help out, to learn the basics. This way they can take a look at your work ethics, what you're all about. Because education obviously plays a role, but the volunteer, I think that a lot of employers will look at that today when you worked at a company, start building a couple years experience with them. It can even be on a part-time basis, obviously. It doesn't have to be full-time. And then you can see how you fit in the culture of a company, how you get along as a team player. But I think the key is when you send that resume in is following up with that interview and letting them know in the interview you're willing to, determination to volunteer.
Great.
Can I just add something? Just in addition to what everyone was saying, I think it's really important to freshen up on your soft skills. And what I mean by that is that nowadays more and more employers are looking for people with a positive working attitude, strong work ethics, willing to go that extra mile, willing to really do anything just to help that particular employer succeed. And I think, Jonathan, you touched on that yesterday at our job fair where you asked some of the candidates, are you willing to start at the bottom? And I think going into whether it's a job interview or an applying, and understand it's hard. You invested $20,000, $30,000 into your education, sometimes $50,000. It's a lot of money. You want to come back and get a return on that particular investment. But we all start at the bottom, and I think that that's okay. Because once you develop those skills, once you develop those relationships, once you show your employer what you have to offer, it opens doors of opportunities. And they always say it's easier to find a job when you're working because people like to see that you're applying yourself. So that's the one thing that I really wanted to add is that more and more now employers are looking for people that they could trust and that have a good, strong attitude.
Just expanding on that, going back to the education, also continuing your education, and you don't have to be paying for it. There's online courses, lots of things online that you can do to kind of get particular experience and education to also show your employers that you're making the effort to improve, to continue to improve your knowledge as well.
That's something we were just talking about today. Is it's much more attractive, I would imagine, to an employer to find someone. You have a resume of a list of all these things that you've done in the past, but you feel like you want to know what are you doing now? Like what effort are you making? I wonder if some of the employers' perspective could talk about what are some of the soft skills that you see a biggest gap in, or that could use the most improvement? Soft skills in general, yes, but could you think of a few examples, either maybe Frank, John, or Danielle?
Well, I think the one that is pretty apparent in any business is customer service. That's huge. Even in my business, it's manufacturing. Even if you're an engineer, or even if you're one of my program managers, customer service is huge because there's always a receiver to what you're giving. And if you don't understand customer service, that's a huge thing. And there are online courses, there's 2-day courses, 2-hour courses that teach you about customer service. And I think a lot of people don't put enough value on that.
I agree, and I'm going to add to the customer service, it's all about communication. When we're dealing with challenges in businesses and moving on, communication becomes a difficult thing today. We've defaulted in the digital world, being a technology company, it's email, it's texting, etc. But it's the communication, being able to talk to someone face to face, to convey your idea, to understand what the other person is saying, ask the questions. I find a lot of people today do not ask the questions, will make a lot of presumptions.
All right, let's talk, speaking of communication, the way that you communicate yourself online. I'm curious what you think, Jay, because I'm thinking back to when I was in high school and Facebook was starting up. Having anything to do with my career was not something that I was considering when I was making a Facebook profile for the first time. So I'm curious how everyone feels about what an online presence means from both sides of perspective, and what does personal branding even mean to you? I'll start with you.
To be very honest, like all the jobs that I've had so far, I've never really relied on my online reputation. I think it's important to make sure that even in your Facebook, Instagram, that you don't have to necessarily maybe keep it professional, but just to make sure that you don't have anything inappropriate on there, because I do know that some employers like to do background checks just to see like if this is like a genuine person, if they can trust this person. And I've never had to really rely on online personal branding. But I feel like it's becoming more and more important as you hear so many stories of people getting jobs through LinkedIn, and sometimes like they just contact old Facebook friends and just get back in touch and see if they're aware of any job opportunities. So I think it's definitely something that young people today have to be careful about, because Facebook, yeah, you can use that for fun, but it's just you have to make sure you balance it, because as you go on and you become older, you're going to need to rely on some of the contacts you made for professional opportunities. So I think people need to always keep that in mind when they're actually posting anything on the web.
Alex?
I talked to my boss, who I'm pretty new at IRCA. I've only been there for 5 weeks, and I was talking to her about this. Yeah. So she did. She said she creeped me. Like she found me on Twitter. You're not watching this, Danielle. She used those words though. Okay, but yeah, they will. She did go out and look for information, and that was an indication to her that I kind of understood social media. You have to think of it as an extension of yourself. It's a presentation of, you want it to be a presentation of your best self, especially if people are going to be looking at it. What I'm interested in is, 20 years down the line, when everyone has had their whole lives recorded, will it be such a scandal to have something, something that you posted some ridiculous post you had when you were 14 years old. I think there's going to be an understanding that, you do stupid things as a kid. We just happen to have everything recorded. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We do a lot of employment counseling around the idea of social media. So obviously you have to keep it appropriate. We all wear different hats, whether it's professional or with your friends. So as long as you keep it professional and obviously locked down, and you should, But we also talk about using social media as a vehicle to promote yourself, to be able to contact employers. There's LinkedIn, Facebook, but Twitter gives you an avenue to talk to people that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Yvonne the other day was tweeting at Workopolis, and they tweeted back at her. So where would you have that opportunity to talk to someone like that? So we like to talk about using your social media to help promote yourself and to get you to places and talking to employers that you wouldn't necessarily be able to. And also put out on Facebook, I'm looking for work, because you never know, your friend might know an aunt, an uncle who's hiring, and there's all those social circles that come crashing together in social media that they might not in reality. So tap into those markets and use it as a vehicle to find employment and to promote yourself.
And something I hear a lot from employers is that they are on social media. I'll let you follow up to this, but that they are on social media, but they're mostly on LinkedIn. And I see a lot of people my age that, yeah, they're on Facebook and they're saying, hey, who has a job? But they're talking to their friends who are also looking for jobs. So I've heard a big part is going on LinkedIn and how that's involved in recruitment. Can we hear from the employers how either you've used it or you've heard other employers use it?
So LinkedIn is a professional networking social media tool. And there you can create profiles all day long and professional. What I wanted to add on that conversation was to ensure you define your core values. So who are you? What do you stand for? And be consistent. I think that's a critical aspect to it. Because when we sit there and interview somebody, we want to interview the person that was represented online. And when you sit there across from somebody and asking questions and they pique your interest, and then sometimes the person online doesn't actually walk into the interview. So it's a big disappointment. So be prepared for that. You need to be very consistent. And don't sacrifice your core values. Stick to them, whatever that might be.
To add to that, LinkedIn is, we're going to talk about this later on, is about networking. It's all about networking. So it's about who you can network with and how fast you can do that and how many people you can network with. LinkedIn is a very quick and easy way to do that. So when you're looking for somebody, or you're in the other way of somebody's looking for you, it's a very quick and easy way to get your name out there very quickly.
And that's a good point from you, Frank, because you hear a lot about representing yourself well online, and I imagine that there's people out there who work so hard at that it doesn't even match who they actually are in person. But anyway, speaking of Twitter and social media, I'm going to throw this to Yvonne. And Yvonne, is there any interesting buzz or comments or questions happening so far?
Well, I have to say, my internet is not connecting right now. So, but I have a backup. I always have a backup. So we do have a lot of questions. One of them is coming from Bev Becker, who is here tonight, and she's curious to see what is the panel's volunteer experience, just to maybe everyone can kind of give one of the organizations that they're volunteering for.
And to add, like, does it connect to your job, if possible?
So I guess I'll start first. I've been volunteering since I was in high school, and I just did it, first initially to complete the 40 hours required for high school, but I found myself enjoying it after, so I volunteered at the animal shelter, the Windsor Regional Hospital, and the pediatrics unit. I volunteered with Essex County diversion program, and I've I initially just wanted to volunteer in at places where it just aligned with my general interests, but as I've started university, I've tried to narrow it down on my program, so I want to be involved with nonprofit organizations. So recently I joined Pathway to Potential, so I just wanted to gain as much experience in the field that I guess I'll eventually be out in. So when I talk to prospective employers and I can tell them, this is who I am and this is what I know and this is what I've done.
Anyone else?
So my main volunteering has been community-minded organizations and business, such as WeTech, for example. That's a volunteer hat. Been involved in it since its inception, 7 years. Formed a networking, speaking of networking later on, formed a networking group that I volunteered at to help other people in terms of learning how to connect with people, how to communicate. Mentoring at a couple of great organizations besides WeTech, also the university. It's a lot of fun to be able to be in that role and talk to great young minds and to hear ideas and actually make a little difference in some of the things that they're trying to achieve. And I've enjoyed volunteering. Those who haven't done it, I highly recommend it.
Excellent, excellent. I am curious now to lift off to, we were talking about networking and the importance of that, but our region has so many employment agencies and service providers and help for people, organizational help that people can take advantage of. And so there's that on the one side, and on the other hand, you can work to develop your personal and professional network. In what situations do you feel like it would be more beneficial to focus on your professional network or go through an organization for help? I'll use either Danielle or Noor to start that off.
Oh, I can start off. I always tell people, if you're looking for work and you're unemployed, then you should be looking for work full-time and consider it a full-time job. And I know it's hard because after not getting callbacks, or you go in for an interview, they don't hire you, it kind of feels like you're down on yourself. But I think that if you invest yourself full-time to looking for work, you will find employment. And I don't think it's either or. I think take advantage of the services we have here in our city. There's plenty of them. Sign up with the service providers, sign up with the temp agencies, volunteer, go to networking events. And I know it seems like a lot, but once you get into the habit of putting yourself out there, showcasing yourself, getting to know people, find a mentor. I think one of the greatest things to do is to find a mentor. I mean, I can honestly, genuinely say I have quite a few mentors right now, and I'm working full-time, and I am in school. But I take the time to really reach out to professionals that have been there, done that, to kind of help me out in getting further in my career. So even if you're not working right now, reach out to somebody and see what advice they have to give you, and you never know who they know. And I think that's what we're talking about when we say networking. If you're a part of a service provider, you're technically networking, because now you're getting to know a new person. If you're going to a networking event, you're meeting quite a few different people. So I don't think that we should narrow down on a particular way of looking for work. I think you should use all avenues, especially nowadays when you have online and you have in person.
I want to jump in really quick. Does everyone know the website 10,000 Coffees? Have you heard of this? It's like a social networking site that bridges young people with industry leaders online. And I did a Google Hangout with them a couple weeks ago, and someone offered the advice. When you ask someone, if you tell someone you're looking for a job, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll get a job. And you never know, it doesn't have to, people will know you want a job, that's a common thing. But if you approach people and just say, hey, I'm interested in your industry, what's it like? And you just start to dig up questions that way, you never know what it'll lead to. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I was gonna save something for the end, but it's like some of the advice would be find someone, like if they have a job that you want, go and talk to them and say, how did you get there? Like, what was the path that you took? And I think you'll find that a lot of people, the path isn't as like clear cut as it may seem. You know, they're taking lots of twists and turns to get to that position.
Excellent. So now let's take a journey down the career path. I want to get more tactical now and really help and give people who could use help or advice more practical ways to get involved. So let's start at the very beginning. I'm unemployed, or hypothetically, I don't know, maybe I am. But so someone looking for a job, where do you start? What is the first thing that you do? I want to throw this to Alex because you have a particular story. Correct me if I'm wrong. Alex was out west and he lived out. I think you're from here. You lived out west, came back and wanted to find a job in this area. What was your first step?
Well, for journalism jobs, I was looking at journalism-specific job boards. So there's a lot of job boards out there that are geared towards journalism jobs, obviously. I also have municipal work experience, so the online job boards. But just those online job boards, like Monster, Workopolis, visiting them every day. You can create RSS feeds, so they feed automatically to your email inbox. You can say, if a new job has popped up, you'll see it, and you'll be one of the first to reply, obviously. So that's where I was looking to first. So that's the advice that I would give. Look online often. Yeah.
I would say one of the first things, which I'm sure you probably had when you were looking online, is to have a resume prepared and to really target your resume. I think where a lot of people tend to forget is don't send out the same resume to every single employer. Tailor it to the job description, to the job ad. Tailor it to the company. Even if you see something that they value in their workplace that you feel you can connect to, add that into your cover letter. That will stand out. Nowadays, and I'm sure Frank and Jonathan will attest to this, an employer will post for one posting and he'll get hundreds of resumes. And that's why they're going through temp agencies. That's why they're going through service providers. That's why they're going through their own contacts to find people. Because to sift through resumes, it takes time, and time is money. So you want to ask yourself, when you're putting together your resume, how do I best market myself? How do I make sure my resume goes to the top of the pile? And I think that that's the ultimate thing that I would first begin with and then expand on that particular pathway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Your resume is like what we call in business an elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds. That is it. And I tell people on the resumes all the time, I says, look at your resume, and in 30 seconds, if you wouldn't hire yourself, either change careers or change your resume. That's what it is. It's 30 seconds. So I actually had a good opportunity to meet with a lot of people yesterday at the college, and I actually went through the resumes and I gave them critiques. If I'm not going to hire you, whether I'm going to hire you or not, your resume is your calling card. If I don't like it, and if you don't like it, would you hire yourself? So, take a look at your resume, and you said it best, you got to research the industry. You got to tailor that resume to what the job you want. And then if I can pick it out, if I'm a professional and I look at it and I see those highlights on your resume, it's going to go to the top of the list. If I got to dig for it, that means that you're probably not going to get the interview, and it'll go to the bottom. So there's the biggest point that you can do. Look at your own resume. If you'd hire yourself, it's good.
Well, and just to capitalize on that, like if you're looking for a job, come to one of the Employment Ontario sites because it's all free services. And the first thing we do is we look at your resume, and if you don't have a resume, we create one for you because your resume is your business card to getting in. So that's our number one thing that we do, and it's free. It's another set of eyes to look at what you have, and then we discuss things like tailoring it to each employer, using your transferable skills. And again, each employer is getting hundreds of applications. Right now it's an employer's market, which means there's more people looking for jobs than there are jobs. So you need to stand out and to make yourself shine so that you're either on top of the pile, but we're also going to talk about how to get those jobs before they're posted, which kind of leads into our next question, because about 75% of the jobs out there are not posted. It's the hidden job market. So you need to tap into that, because if you can get there before the other 200 people do, then you're ahead of the game, and then you have a better chance of getting that job.
I want to move into that a little bit. Sometimes I hear certain employers don't even want to post a job because they know that they'll get a couple hundred applications, and the work that, this is what I've heard, is that it involves, it's almost more of a hassle to post it publicly than just post it maybe to the employees that you have and start it off internally a little bit. So can we talk a little bit more about what the role of the resume is? Is it as meaningful as it used to be? And what about all those jobs that are not formally posted?
So I'll speak to the resume. If you're going to send a cover letter, I think it's a great idea to send it. And today, a lot of it's digitally. So your email and your cover letter need to be very short, very concise, to the point. You need to know the company you're applying to, you need to know the position, and you need to be qualified. I will share with you, employers are extremely inundated with a lot of information. So as Jonathan mentioned, it's actually about 10, 15 seconds. If it doesn't jump off, it goes into a pile, right? So just visualize all these resumes. You go into pile A, B, and C. Yes, no, maybe. So you want to be in that yes pile. What's going to set you off differently than the rest?
What do you think either the biggest or most common mistake is that people make when they're just starting out to look for work?
Oh, that one I had to think about, but it wasn't that hard once I thought about it. Once I got into it, setting unreasonable expectations. Set reasonable expectations, because the hardest thing is when you go for that first interview and you get a no, and it's disastrous. You don't want to even get out of your house for a month. But if you set reasonable expectations, you're probably less likely to get that no, and then you can build on that. So set reasonable expectations. Don't set unreasonable expectations, because you're just going to set yourself up for failure.
All right.
The old drop the resume off and go. Just, hey, I'm here to drop off my resume. Here you go, and then leave. Whoever's taking your resume, this is another point that I wanted to make, but take the opportunity to talk to them, engage with them, show them your personality. But it's also important, administrative staff, like administrative assistants, people that work front desks, the way you interact with them, if it's the first time or if you've been called in for an interview, they are going to weigh in on the process. If you go in and you treat them like, they're dirt, like you're not respecting them, they're going to go in and say, this person's kind of a jerk. Don't hire them. And I talked about that with my boss this afternoon, and she said, that's the case. If you can't treat someone at the front line with respect, then there's no chance.
I used to work in human resources at St. Clair College, and I would call people. And if you're getting a hard time while you're trying to call someone to set up for an interview, it doesn't bode well for the rest of your career at that place. But just moving on though, I find the most common mistake is people just don't market themselves right. You really, as Nora said, you really need to focus on your resume, tailoring it to who you apply to, not sending out generic resumes. Having cover letters that speak specifically to the job postings. Most job postings have details. If you fit those details, put them right in the cover letter. Also, we like to do skills highlights at the beginning of a resume. Don't make an employer guess if you can do this job. Don't make them read to the second page. You want this? I have that. Do a nice skill set match, so within 15 seconds they can say, yep, let's bring them in for an interview, and that's when you really get to sell yourself.
Okay.
So marketing is huge.
So, hallelujah, you get an interview. What happens next? I want to hear it from, let's say, from Alex and from Jay. How do you prep for an interview, especially if maybe you haven't done it that often? Or what are some things that what's the process that you go through to prepare?
To prepare for an interview, what I do is I think about the job that I'm applying for, and I think about the obvious questions that would be asked. The obvious questions that would be asked. For example, if I'm applying for a job for a cashier position at the dollar store, then I would highlight customer service skills questions, because often they give you situations and you have to, on the spot, determine how you would react to it. So I'd kind of just imagine questions, and there's actually a lot of websites that have been coming up where they'll detail a company profile, and they'll also include positions, and people often have feedback on interviews that they've had with a particular company, so they can help figure out what kind of difficult questions would be available too.
Number 1, motivational music. Before I go into an interview, I will sit in my car and I will crank up a tune that I just love, and I'll just get pumped up. Because if you want to go in with energy, you have to work for that energy, right? Another thing, visualize. I know athletes do this a lot. How is the game going to go? Visualize how your interview is going to go and how you're going to succeed in it. Another thing, make some notes. Write down questions that you want to ask, but also make notes of the points that you want to get across. Politicians are really good at fitting things that they want to get in as answers into the questions that they're asked. So have a few points that you want to get across, and regardless of the question, try to fit them in. You don't want to look like you're avoiding the question, but kind of bridging the question to introduce information that you want to get across that they might have not asked about.
Researching the company before you go is extremely important. So if they ever ask you, what did you do to prepare for this interview? I research you. I know your mission statement, your values, things like that. Practice interviewing questions. Most employers do behavior-based, so practice with your friends. I go through behavior-based questions with my clients previous to them having interviews. The more prepared, it's just like having a test. If you're prepared, you go in more confident, and you get curveballs every now and then, but then you can rely on some notes that you've taken. I also say to write down the interview questions, jot them down as best you can. You can use those for future interviews. I always like to, sometimes they take away the piece of paper, but then you run outside and write down what you can remember. No, I have a whole litany of questions over my years of working, and then I use those to practice for future interviews. Describe your education experience, how it relates to this position, and what they're great questions to then use as part of your toolkit to prepare yourself for the next interview.
And just to add on what you guys just said, be confident, because I think one of the biggest things is a lot of people have struggled answering the question, tell me a little bit about yourself, or why should I hire you? And I just finished completing 95 interviews for one of our pre-app programs, and those were the two questions people struggled with. I kept hearing, I'm hardworking, I have a great attitude, right after each other. Like I did 20 interviews a day, and I just kept hearing the same answer. And it was the ones that kind of really let us know why we should hire them. They told us about themselves. Their character shined a little bit in the interview that really stuck out after we were doing our assessment. So I think that going in, know that you're the best person for this job. And I think that's very, very crucial. And if you've done a few interviews and you're still not hearing back, call the employer and ask them, can you give me some tips on where I went wrong, what I could have done a little bit differently? Not all employers are willing to take the time, some may, or practice with someone, a friend of yours, and ask them for feedback, or access the employment service providers like St. Clair College, because they offer you the opportunity to do mock interviews. And you can never be skilled enough at interviews. I mean, I interview people and I still prepare myself for interviews. So I think it's constantly trying to update those skills in order to really let your skills shine in an interview. That's important.
And I think that fits into personal branding too, is that it's not everybody is a hardworking, positive, you know what I mean? It's okay to show your authentic and quirky side. I think people have an expectation of that. I would like to see if our audience is paying attention and ask anyone here, what is a question that you hate getting at an interview? Does anything come to mind? I can single you guys out too. Why did you leave your last employer? That's a good one. So have you either been asked or asked somebody, why did you leave your last employer, and how has that gone?
I'm going to ask a question, or kind of answer it with a question. Do you know why employers ask that question? Do you know why employers ask that question?
Well, I know why I asked that question.
Yeah. Okay, because I've prepared many people for that question. They want to see how you represent your former employer. They want to see what are you going to bash them? And then that means that you may do that to them. So if you were let go, I mean, you may not want to be honest and say that you were just, don't lie, but kind of just say it just wasn't a good fit. We were both looking for different opportunities, but they really ask that question because they want to see your character. It comes back to, that's why they ask behavioral questions as well. They want to get to know the person that they're interviewing. It's very difficult to get to know a person within 20 minutes. So they ask those tough questions because they want to see how quick you are to answer and how honest you're going to be.
I'll give mine. Does anyone else have another one?
Yeah. What kind of salary do you expect?
What kind of salary do you expect?
Yeah.
When does that come up? How does it come up? And that's really awkward, I think. So what do you do with that?
I actually have that written down as the hardest question to answer in interviews. And we always try and tell people, try not to give a number, because you're either going to lowball yourself or highball yourself. If you are pushed into a corner, a range is always good, but you can answer in a different way, like saying, an entry-level salary, would be good. And in 3 months, if I'm exceeding expectations, then we can look at, a raise or moving forward from there. But it is really hard when they ask that question, so you try not to give a specific number, because I have had friends who, they lowballed themselves, and once they were in, they talked to other people, and they're like, man, I could have got 10 grand more. And you feel terrible about it.
Yeah. Something else I heard is, I read this online the other day, is that if an employer were to ask you, what did you make at your last job, you don't really have to tell them. They might try to corner you, but what I read it was that you can kind of dance around that question, because they really have no right to know that business. So how do you feel about that side of it?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it's okay to be honest and say that's private and confidential information. And if the person that's interviewing you doesn't like that answer, well, I think you've made up your mind you're not going to work there. That would be my core value.
I actually have a question for the employers here. So if a person highballs a salary, do you guys look negatively upon that? Or if it's still reasonable but just higher, then you're willing to pay them, I guess?
I personally have never asked their salary expectations, and whenever a candidate asks me, the interview's over, in my opinion. I like to talk about salary at the second interview, is my style when I used to do interviews. If they highball it, depends on the position that they're applying for. But I think if you do your homework, if you do your homework on the company, if you do the homework on the positions relative in this community, with the internet, with the access to all the information, you should already know the range. But if somebody is going to be extraordinary high, if a sales rep walks in and says, I want to get paid a salary of $150K plus commission, you have to really think about that comment. And my answer to that is, great, we'll pay you $150K. What are you gonna deliver for that? So you just turn it right back to them with the question, and see them dance, because now it's a tough one for them to answer.
I can add to that. To be honest with you, I'm a pretty straightforward guy when I do an interview with somebody, and I do ask that question: what's your expected salary? Some lowball, some highball. So if you're in a situation where you highball it, I'm going to say to you really quick and up front, I'm going to say that position won't fill that expectation, but I can do this and this and this, and you can do this and this and this to get there. Is that something, a career path that you'd like to see? So I really believe that a highball actually means that you're putting a good value on yourself. My job as the employer is to try and lay out a plan so you can get from point A to point B. So I do ask that question: what's your salary expectation? And you can highball it. I might think a little bit less of you if you put something unreasonable. But if you put something that is reasonable, that's the education part of it, we can sit there and talk for 5-10 minutes to see what the options are for you to get there. And I think that's a good thing to do, because that's a great thing to show motivation, that you're a go-getter, you wanna advance yourself, and how can you be better? So I wouldn't look negatively on it if it's reasonable.
And I think that fits well with what Noor was saying about confidence. It's okay to push it a little bit, as long as it's not insulting to somebody. But be confident, and yeah, that's a fair answer, is that you can grow into it. Does anyone else have an interview question that you really hate?
I always get this one. What's your biggest weakness? I hate that.
Kryptonite for you.
You're a perfectionist.
Yes.
Perfectionist is always good.
How do you answer that in an honest and eloquent way?
I've always gotten that question, and I always pick a weakness that's also a strength. For example, I often say that being too detail-oriented can be a problem, because sometimes you might lose sight of the big picture, but it still emphasizes that you care about what you're doing, and you can remember the details. So I think it's always good to pick something that can always be a positive thing as well.
Also showing how you're kind of working on it. I struggle with things that move too slow, organizations that are slow to change, but you recognize that organizations move slow, and kind of just show how you're working on that thing that you think is a weakness.
I forget what I was gonna say.
That could be your weakness.
If somebody asks, I hear it's a common one is give me a time when da 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 and everything went wrong, and you have to explain how everything went wrong. And the advice that I heard is always follow that up with what you learned and what you'll know to do different next time. That's the way to end it.
Always end on a positive note.
Exactly.
Even if it's a train wreck and it happened, you learned a lot from it, and it's never going to happen that way again. So it's okay to have those stories because it shows that you're growing as a person. And we were all new once, and things happened. So, because we have a question at St. Clair, give us a time when you made a mistake. What was a mistake? How did you handle it, and what did you do to rectify the problem? And they're just looking for the process and the thinking and what went on, and knowing that it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, I think people get really bogged down in the specifics. From the employee side, is like, what specific instance do I use? But I get the sense that the employer wants to know. The employer wants to know more of a core or a higher level who you are. One, I think a really big one, my most hated one, is where will you be in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, whatever. How do you answer that? Like, the technology's moving so fast. People are shifting jobs left and right. How do you answer that, and what do you get by asking that question?
Well, it's good to see someone, if they have a visionary and where they want to be in the future. Hopefully they say the company they're being interviewed by in a higher position. That'd be, I think, a pretty good answer. But if they've done their homework, at least they know there's other areas and departments, et cetera, that they can move into. Sort of like the path that Jonathan was talking about when we were talking about salaries.
Another thing would be to include your professional development, kind of adding on to what you were saying earlier. What you are willing to do in the next 5 years to continuously move yourself forward. So with or without a job, what are you going to continuously do to progress?
And is it okay? Do you have anything else to add? Is it okay if someone says, let's say someone asked me that question, I say, I really don't know yet. I want to move in this direction in my career, and I'm still working on it. I want to see what it's like moving in this direction, and I don't know if I'll be with a specific company. Is that okay to be like a stepping stone?
I personally, my opinion, I wouldn't highlight that in an interview. You want to, employers right now, they don't want turnover. It takes time to train you. It takes time to invest in you and money. So they want to see commitment. So to say you're unsure, I'm kind of, and we had that recently when we were interviewing for the pre-app program at St. Clair College. We could only select 26 people, and we really needed to narrow down the applicants. So that was one of the answers that actually made it or broke it for someone. Wow. If they didn't know that they want to work in the manufacturing sector, that they saw themselves there for the next 5 years, because it takes 4 to 5 years to become a journey person, then unfortunately we didn't take them, because we really wanted people to come in and have done the research. So going back, doing the research about the company, doing the research about the program. So that's the one thing in an interview, I wouldn't advise you to do that. But if you have a mentor, I do advise you to ask your mentor, this is the particular pathway I want to take right now. I'm really unsure. What do you think? Is this going to help? Do you think it'll hinder? Or what other pathway do you have advice for me to pursue?
Great. Can we throw it over to Yvonne again? And is your Wi-Fi connected?
We are all good. So first, I want to give a shout out to Jamie Fox, Max Seneschal, Jason Toner, and Sarah Mushtak, and I apologize if I'm saying that name wrong, who are watching us live from home, among many others. So we have to give a shout out to Liam Price, who absolutely did a great tweet. He said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting from the bottom because Drake did it and look where he is. So I think that was a pretty good tweet. We had some great tips coming in from Alicia Higginson, and she's talking about you just updating your voicemail to a professional voicemail. Also, Google yourself, right? Those are some tips coming in from social media. Also, we've got a question from Sean Keats. The panel's talking about volunteering, and he's curious as, if you don't know these leaders, they're really busy and you want to get mentorship, what is the panel's take on how do you approach them and connect with them? Again, these people are busy, they may get inundated with emails, so what's your input on trying to connect with somebody who is a community leader?
One way is connect on LinkedIn, call their office and see if you can get a phone appointment for 5 minutes, something very small. Most people that we deal with that are community leaders in this region, we're very, very fortunate. They're very giving with their time, so it doesn't hurt to try.
I would say I was just at an Emerging Leaders Chamber of Commerce events, and it was packed. There was lots of people there, lots of employers. It's a great way to wander around in a very casual atmosphere, meet new people. BizX has mixers, as well as come to Why Not events, because we are all there talking about the same things. As alumni events, whether St. Clair College or University of Windsor, there's lots of employers and leaders of the community who attend all of those functions, and sometimes they cross over, and it's a good place to meet up with people in a less formal setting, because it is hard when you're at work and you're sending emails, but you can meet, have a chat, and then go forward from there.
And just to add on, so if you do end up attending the networking event and you meet someone and you connected with them, you ask them for your business card, or they'll automatically give you their business card. The best thing to do is follow it up with an email the very next day or that evening and let them know how great it was meeting them, how you really valued the advice that they gave you or the conversation that you had, and ask, if you ever have time, would you mind chatting? I'm looking to pursue a particular career, and I just wanted to hear your feedback. And that's how it starts out informal, and it may stay informal, but that's how mentorship relationships begin. And I just want to kind of give a shout out to Frank, because Frank is actually one of my mentors who's also become a good friend of mine. But truly, when I first met Frank, he was very open, and he's one of the most busiest men that I know, amongst Jonathan is the other one. But they still
had time to come.
But they still had time to come, and they still make time to help. And a lot of people, just ask. If someone were to ask you for help, more than likely you'll say yes. You never want to turn someone away. And if they're busy, they'll let you know what, my next few weeks looks really full. However, what about March? If you have time in March, I'd love to chat with you. And I think that that's what it means to put yourself out there. And it's always the first one that's the hardest, and I guarantee after the first and second, it gets so much easier.
I would say get to know your industry associations. That's probably the biggest and easiest and quickest way to get to know the leaders in that industry that you're trying to get into. Get to know the associations. Normally the people that are associated with associations are very good people. They're people that want to give their time. They're the ones that are going to give you that one-on-one presence that you need to get to know the people you need to know. So.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of mentors want to see people succeed, and something I hear a lot is it's like, what I imagine is you going to a mentor and saying, what do I do? I don't know what I'm doing. That's a really hard question to answer. But if you can show that you have specific questions, because their time is so valuable, and work on those things, and then next time you see them, you say, look, this is what I've done, and then you just go step by step by step. I'm curious to hear. Because I feel like for young people, the biggest thing that we need is just a chance and a little bit more responsibility, that we don't have necessarily a record to show. So how from the employer side have you worked with people where, what is it about people that you feel like you can really give them a shot and you think, yeah, that's a person that I can take a chance on even though they haven't done that specific thing in the past?
It's all about their approach, their attitude, their character. And, there's some co-op and internship, and we talked about volunteer earlier. But I think if a young individual comes in, of course, we've gone through several of them that come in and do co-op because of our ties in the community, and we find that they're all eager to learn. They're working in a team environment for the first time. They're working in a professional environment. So I guess how you handle yourself, it comes down to the communication. Those soft skills are critical. I just wanted to add one thing real quick on interviews. My quickest interview was 5 seconds. The gentleman came in, it was actually less, it was a jellyfish handshake, and he looked at the floor. There's no way that you could survive pounding the pavement the old-fashioned way, or even with the internet, if you can't shake the person's hand, look them in the eye, and say hello.
We're getting close to 7 o'clock, I think. So if we have any time for Q&A, if there's any burning questions that people have in the audience, let's start with the audience. We're going to do this really professionally and just have people, you can raise your hand and then yell it. The hands are just flying up for people online. I don't know who to pick. Yeah.
My question is, there's a lot of jobs that you have to apply online. Are some companies still accepting the hard copy of a resume?
So the question is, there's a lot of job applications that go up online. Do you still accept a hard copy for those applications or positions?
We do. Mostly is electronic, but those will drop off the resume. So we do take hard copies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A resume is a resume, however we get it. I get it electronically at the end of the day, but it just needs to get to us. So.
And from online?
Yeah, we've got a question here, and this person is saying, what advice do you have for those who dislike talking about themselves? Seems like there's a lot geared towards outgoing extroverts. What if you're an introvert?
Oh, I can answer that one because I am an introvert, believe it or not. You know what? For those who are an introvert, I always say if you're that type of person, practice talking about yourself. That's the first thing. Get used to talking about yourself because you got to remember that's an interview, right? If you don't talk about yourself, I won't hire you. The second thing is use your resume. I always say, because that's what I do, I use it as a cue card, right? Because if you go through your resume, when I ask that first question, this is the question they always make a mistake on, tell me about yourself. Your resume is you. If you tailored your resume right, you should be able to go through the highlights in your resume, and by the time you get to the end, I'm going to want to hire you. So use it as a cue card. And there's nothing wrong with holding your resume in front of yourself while I have a copy.
Interviewing is basically bragging about yourself, but it's a fine line between being arrogant and coming across as genuine. But it's what you have to do to get the job because you're trying to beat out everybody else. So it is really hard. Once upon a time, I was shy. I got over it. But you really do, and it's all about practicing. And I've sat down with my friends who are shy, and we just hammer out the questions over and over, and it's just trying to get over that hump, and it is really difficult. But when you're sitting in front of, my biggest interview was like 5 people. I had to do a 25-minute presentation. I was freaking out days before. There's no sleep happening. But the more I practiced, the better I felt about it. So it's just practice, practice, practice.
I think the fake it till you make it philosophy applies here as well. So if you're shy, you just have to pretend you're outgoing and just to kind of challenge like your kind of spirit animal and just like put yourself out there.
I like that. That's a good takeaway, spirit animal.
So I have a question for the panel. We've been tweeting about this for days now, and we're hearing a lot about the importance of networking and professional branding and whatnot. So I want to ask each one of you, the panel, is it what you know or who you know? And you have to pick one, and you can't plead the fifth.
Do I have to answer?
Yep.
I'm not. Okay.
So yeah, is it what you know or who you know?
If I have to pick one, I'll say who. And the reason is nothing you do is alone. And I said this on Twitter the other day, but at the end of the day, you're looking at this person and they could have all the skills, but you have to ask yourself, do I want to see this person every day? Is this does this person make me excited that I want to see them and work with them? And am I excited? What feeling do I get from that person? And I don't think it comes down to just, I think people take the word knowing, it's not like you know them, it's like, do you really know who they are? And something that I've heard Maureen Lucas of Lucas Works say that I love is she hires for attitude and trains for skill. So things can be picked up along the way. It depends on what the attitude is. Who you know is definitely not everything, but it's really up there.
I would definitely say that if I had to pick, I would say it's important about who you know, because I know a lot of qualified people and they're just not able to get the jobs that they want. And I find that even maybe people that aren't as qualified in a certain field, they get jobs because their uncle owns a company or their aunt owns it. So I feel that when it comes down to it, you can develop your qualifications as you move along, but if you don't know the right people, I feel like you're going to have a hard time entering a certain job market.
I would pick who you know. My own personal career, everything was who I knew. My professional career, out of the 3 companies, 2 out of the 3 were who I knew.
Yeah, I would say who you know. Just in terms of getting that one interview, the first interview, getting your foot in the door. If you have a connection through somebody that you know, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I would also say it's who you know, but not necessarily do you know CEOs. It's do you know who can help you, whether it's through Employment Ontario or through one of your professors who can recommend you for a job, or it doesn't have to be that specific person high up or an HR director. Who do you know that can help you? And then what you know gets you moving further in your career.
I would say if it's what you know, because if you know to know the right people,
unfair.
Then
that was good.
You'll get yourself ahead.
You had to be different, didn't you? I saw it in your eyes. You were going to do it. I'm going to say who you know as well, because I agree with everything the panel said, but there's one other thing. When you look at who you associate with, it's very important. Your circle of influence, or the circle of the people you keep around you, says a lot about you. So when I'm looking at your references, It's important to put good references. Like don't put your babysitter from when you were 12, okay? But if I see somebody who puts like a priest, it kind of tells me about you, right? If you put your professor, that tells me about you, right? If you put your last employer, that's a really good one, right? Because if your last employer speaks very highly of you, that's who you know, that's a really good thing. And I really look good upon that. I'll call your last employer, and if they get a good reference, then that means that you left on good terms. That means I want you to come work for me, so.
I'm just going to add on to that too. That was a great point, references. Because that's one of the things we found to be a big challenge with young people. Because if you don't have experience, where did you develop those references? And we find a lot of times people don't let the references know that they put them down as a reference. So then you call the reference and they say, who? What is this for? And that really hinders your opportunity to really get that particular job. So if you are going to ask for a reference, make sure you let them know that you're asking them to be a reference, and make sure you had a good relationship with that particular person, because believe it or not, people will give bad references. And another thing, volunteering is a great way to get great references. So if you're wondering why you should volunteer, I'm not working, I need to get paid, I need money, I need to survive. Well, that's where volunteering can play a significant role. It can increase your skills, but also develop your network and provide you with the best reference, because you're giving your time for free and your skills for free. So people are willing to go that extra mile for you.
Well, and if you're volunteering somewhere and a job posting comes up, you're already in the culture, they know you, and if they like you and your work habits are really good, you're ahead of everybody else, and they may not even post a job, you'll get interviewed first. So it is, I know a lot of people feel like, well, I'm just, giving them free labor, but you're also doing it for a lot of different reference development, networking, but it could lead to a full-time job, you never know.
Great. Are there any other burning questions that people won't be able to sleep tonight if they don't ask? Steve.
What can be done to push employers as well as community leaders to give somebody a chance to take on a project and then decide whether they're going to hire them or partner with them based on that, rather than based on the interview and resume process and then the behind-the-scenes screening?
I've heard of this before. So the question was like, what I got is giving people like a test project and using
like Donald Trump does on The Apprentice, for instance, only without the TV and showmanship, and it stays for showmanship stuff.
So you give people like a test run or like a
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've heard of this is it's almost like auditioning, and you ask people to kind of do something, whether it's at the interview or shortly after, temporarily, that would mimic or be similar to what their role would be on the job.
So when we interview for technical development, software development programmers, we do assign some projects. Sometimes they're homework assignments. Sometimes they sit in our office 3 to 5 business days. And then we take a look at the quality of work that they're doing, if there's a good fit for the company or not.
I think that's just to also add on to that. That's where a lot of service providers come into play with their wage incentives. They build relationships with employers to offer them, and they also offer them wage incentives to offset the training costs, so that if you are working with a service provider, such as going to see Danielle, she can pitch you to an employer, offset their costs. She's already built a relationship. She's helping in marketing you, and that will assist the employer in kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable in investing the time and money into hiring you. And another thing, I know that when I first built a relationship with Jonathan at Laval, for our particular project, I stayed interested in what he was doing, he stayed interested in what we were doing at St. Clair College, and then yesterday at the job fair, he said, if there's a great applicant, I'm going to take them. And he kept his promise, and he found an applicant, and he's going to start them off on a placement in March. So if you are a business and you're looking to find people, also, this is another pitch for the service providers in the room, to reach out to the service providers, because they have a lot of candidates looking for work, and they know them very well, so they can be able to market some of those candidates to you.
All right, Yvonne, are there any other Twitter questions before I ask the last question here?
Let's see here. One question coming in is about, if someone doesn't have post-secondary education but has lots of experience, what advice do you have for someone in that situation?
Well, we would tailor their resume to really shine on the experience that they have, because we have a lot of people that do not have the post-secondary. If they want to get it, we can talk about that as well. Like I said, we have the Second Career Program, or if they're looking to start their own business, it's funded by the ministry. But I've tailored a lot of resumes to really talk about the experience, because a lot of times experience is worth more than a degree. And employers, I think, can recognize that, and maybe the employers here can speak to that.
Well, I hate to say it, but that's pretty true. Normally what ends up happening for somebody who's very successful in our industry, they don't normally have time for education. That's just it's just a natural fact, okay? So if you have a resume and it's focused more on experience, again, focus it on what we can make relative to us. Because your story is probably pretty similar to mine, right? If you've been around for 20 years or 25 years, I won't date myself, but if you've been around for a long time, your story is going to be similar to mine. So when I look at your resume and I start seeing the things that are similar or that I can relate to, then you're probably going to have a better chance than somebody who doesn't.
Excellent. So I'm going to wrap up here with one last question for everybody. For everyone who's watching, what is one action that a young person can take in the next week that will take their career to the next level? Let's start with you.
Like we talked about earlier today, I think personal branding is definitely important. So today, if whoever's watching this just makes a LinkedIn profile that highlights all their skills and qualifications, I think that might really help make a major impact on the jobs that they apply for next week.
I would encourage to go to a networking event and set a goal to meet 2 new people and tell your story to them.
Find someone whose job that you want. If you know them, if you don't know them, reach out to them, talk to them. How did they get that job? What path did they take? Just kind of learning about how they got there.
I would encourage people to come to the St. Clair College Employment Center here in Windsor, located at the Roundhouse Plaza, because we do talk to people that actually still have their own jobs, who are looking for different jobs, or we can talk about moving your career forward. I have counseled people who are like, listen, I'm doing this, but I want to do that in the same place, and we talk about the skills and the ideas and how to talk to your manager or upper management about moving forward and letting them know that you want to rise higher in the corporation.
I would encourage you to join Why Not and to reach out to one of us on the panel and to continue this dialogue. I think you can never get enough advice on how to move your career forward.
My answer is pretty simple. Get to know somebody who has been successful in that industry. Get to know them and ask the question, what do I need to do? Where do I start? Who do I talk to? What do I need to know? And they will normally give you the answers and put you on the right path instead of you trying to bounce off and do that sideways move that most people do.
And is there any advice from our social media desk and tech desk?
Well, of course there's advice from me. I have 3 tips. One being Workforce Windsor Essex has a great mailing list. If you go to their website, you can click add their constant contact list, and under Darlene's postings, she sends out a number of awesome job postings almost on a daily basis. So that's one. Number 2, as I put together a monthly networking event, knowing that the only reason why I'm here and I'm with WeTech is because of networking. So come to either follow me on Twitter or follow WeTech or check out our website. We do post, again, a monthly where to network, and it ranges for young professionals to people in service industry, whatnot. And the third would be to check out a website called workstory.net. This is an example of a great website where it goes through people's work stories. So if you're becoming a nurse, you can see videos of other nurses and kind of how they got there. What programs did they take? Where did they volunteer? And what are their mentors like? So again, those are 3 tips from me.
Okay. So that'll be everything for tonight, everybody. I really want to thank you all for coming and for watching online. Thank you to the Windsor Star and the Green Bean Coffee for hosting us. For our excellent tech and social media desk. Before we go, I don't know if you can zoom in on this. This is a $30 gift card that you're splitting between 6 of you. So you have $5 each to spend at the Green Bean Cafe here, and I hope that'll get you a great coffee, donut, or almost a glass of wine. So my name is Dan Brown. This is the Windsor Here Forum. Everyone stay warm. If you even remember what that feels like. And until next time, thanks a lot.